8 million stories in the naked city, and chances are you can only keep up with a fraction of them during your hectic day. Give us a few minutes then to bring you up to speed on what New Yorkers are talking about. This is the DeBrief. Welcome, everyone, to a special edition of the DeBrief. This is a season and a weekend, in fact, when many people, even those who aren't particularly religious, may take a few moments to reflect upon spiritual values and what's gone on in their past year in their lives, and as they look forward, what they expect in the coming year. So it's been tradition now in the DeBrief that we bring together a panel of religious leaders to kind of reflect on some of the stories that have been in the news and look at them through the prism of faith values. So joining us this morning, we're happy to have back Rabbi Joseph Potasnik. He begs to come back every year. Executive Vice President of the New York Board of Rabbis, and he's a senior rabbi at the Congregation Mount Sinai in Brooklyn Heights. He also has a radio show on WNBC, Religion on the Line, every Sunday morning, and a chaplain of the FDNY. We welcome Monsignor Jamie Gigantiello. He's with the Mary Queen of Heaven Parish in Old Mill Basin, Brooklyn. He's also the Vicar for Development of the Diocese of Brooklyn. Is that the money guy?
Yes,
Trying to raise the money guy? Yeah, okay, key. Imam Shamsi Ali, welcome back, the Imam of the Islamic Cultural Center of New York, the city's largest mosque on 96th Street and 3rd Avenue, and he's on the advisory board of numerous interfaith organizations. And we welcome Swami Yuktatmananda from the Ramakrishna Vivekananda Center of New York, the spiritual leader of the Hindu community here. Swami, welcome. Swami, let's just take a few minutes to tell people about the Hindu community here in New York and about Hindu as a religion.
Hinduism is a religion that has been in existence from time without beginning. And the scriptures of Hinduism is the Vedas, which is a record of the spiritual experiences of saints and seers, sages and seers. And our institution, Ramakrishna Vivekananda Center, is part of the Ramakrishna Order of India. Our center is based in 94th Street, East 94th Street, between Madison and 5th Avenue. And our congregation consists of Indians and followers of other faiths too.
We welcome you to the table here as we look at a number of stories. Usually we begin, or we have had to in the last couple of years, as you who've been here remember, with the economy. I want to ask you about the pitfalls of the growing gap between the haves and the have-nots. Have you seen the implications of this already in your respective flocks and your congregations? Talk about it, Rabbi.
I think the first thing is that there are people who are hurting so badly, and yet they don't want others to know they're hurting. They want to provide their children with all that they've had before. They want to maintain certain affiliations, but yet fiscally they can't. And we find a number of people who can't fulfill pledges, can't pay dues, and we make allowances. I don't know any house of worship that's going to turn anybody away who can't afford. I don't know any school that's going to say, we're not going to educate your child if you don't have the funds. So it's given us a challenge to respond to those, but there are many out there who really need strength and support from others. And I think it speaks highly of this country in particular. I looked at a list of the most generous countries. The United States is first. And here are people who don't have as much, but yet still others are giving a little bit more to make up, or some who gave more are giving a little less. But together, we're giving more than anybody else to respond to the various crises in human life.
And yet, we don't really get into particular politics, but there's frustration in Washington with leaders not moving the ball forward to solve certain things. And yet we see the numbers of those slipping below the poverty line continue to increase. From a faith historical perspective, what are the concerns here? What happens? What are the risks of that when that gap between those who have and those who have not just continues to widen?
I think one of the most important and fundamental issue in any religion is about social justice. And if you study the history of all prophets, starting from Abraham to Moses, down to Jesus to Muhammad, all these prophets basically came to empower the marginalized in our society. Moses came to save the Israelites from Pharaoh. Jesus came to empower the Israelites from the Roman slavery at the time. And Muhammad certainly came to empower the Meccans from the rich people, enslaved those who were poor in our society. So I think the gap between the rich and the haves and the have-nots have been the problems, historically, and that's one of the important tasks of the religion to tackle. So we are certainly, into the side of those call themselves today the 99%, because we want justice in the society, and that includes economic justice.
Rabbi touched upon the fact that places of worship are often a refuge and provide assistance in times of need. Monsignor, you are a development person. You try to raise money. How has this affected the ability to raise funds for churches, both big and small? I mean, the Catholic Church is a big institution, but how has this affected your ability to then meet the needs in various communities?
Well, believe it or not, and when times get tough, people respond more. The need is greater. And I have to say, for the Brooklyn Diocese, where I come from, over the last couple of years, our real charitable donations have gone up. We've had a number of fundraisers, especially for our schools and for our parishes and for our social services, have increased because people see the need is greater.
And yet there are some small parishes struggling, though?
Yes, there are parishes that are struggling, and, the diocese helps them out, and, we're there really to assist them whenever they're needed.
It must be heartening to hear that even in these tough times, people are still digging deeper to try and help others. You mentioned the 99%, Imam, and this Time magazine says this is the year of the protester. Swami, let me ask you, what role does religion play in either supporting or downplaying civil unrest or political upheaval? And we've seen a lot of it around the world. That's why Time magazine made that decision.
What's most important is to understand the fundamental principles of religion, fundamental in the sense about the nature of human personality, about the nature of God, understanding this, and then trying to live religion instead of dabbling with the cursory aspects of religion. That'll conduce to more and more harmony and peace among people, because a cursory understanding of religion can inspire people to human violence. So all this is, I would say, it's because of a lack of proper comprehension about certain eternal principles of religion. In this connection, I would like to quote Swami Vivekananda, the founder of our order. He defines religion as an idea that raises a brute unto a man and a man unto a God. In other words, animal nature, human nature, and divine nature, they coexist in our personality. Religion is an idea that helps me transcend from animal nature to human nature, and from human nature to divine nature. Whatever religion I follow doesn't matter. My label could be anything. But as long as I undergo this character transformation, the purpose of religion is served.
Swami, you raise an interesting point. Those who would pervert religion in the name of some sort of a noble cause, but they don't mean that. But where is that line? Where can religion actually serve a purpose to rise up against wrongdoing? Is that what we're seeing with the Arab Spring? How does it fit?
Well, first of all, the protester is not an unknown figure in biblical tradition. Abraham was a protester, protested against the evil in the cities, protested against God's plan to destroy the cities at first. Moses was a protester. But the question becomes, as people of faith, people who believe in God, what are we going to do for other humans? Are we going to increase the job market? Are we going to provide people with skills so they can get more jobs? It's not enough simply to raise our voices. That's the first step. But I think the second step becomes very critical in terms of implementing policies that will translate into people bettering their lives.
We've seen a number of clergy present with the Occupy Wall Street movement. We had an interesting situation recently with Trinity Church, which on the one hand felt it was sustaining the movement, providing facilities, and yet asked the protesters not to go to part of the property, and they did. It was turned on them. How is that difficult as a religious leader, Monsignor, to confront that situation?
We have to let people know that they have a right to do this. Okay. They have a right to when there's an injustice out there, we have a right to speak out. Yeah. Because, without justice, you're never going to have peace. But, of course, nonviolence is the way to go. Mm-hmm. And we have to lead through example. So I always believe in peaceful protest. I believe in prayer. I believe in having people speak what they feel is, an injustice, but not to do it in any way that's going to disrupt or take away the rights of other people.
In Islam, there's a religious foundation that says that noble intentions doesn't justify any means. In other words, to achieve any noble things in life, you have to do it within the bounds of the law itself. And that's why, as the Swami mentioned about people destroying themselves for whatever they have in their intention, their minds, but that is simply wrong. Because to achieve good things, what you consider good things, through wrong ways, is wrong itself. And so I tend to agree with the Monsignor, but at the same time, I think we need to emphasize on the importance of dealing with social justice again. This is a chronic disease in our society. We see people, the richer are becoming richer and the poor are becoming more marginalized in our society. And I think religions play an important role there to encourage those who are marginalized to understand and to grasp back their dignity. And dignity is not only sentiments and emotion, but something that should real, as the Rabbi mentioned. We are praying in the mosque, full attention to God, but then we leave the mosque with hungry, empty stomach. You cannot concentrate to think about God if you are hungry. And there is a saying in Islam saying, al-asha qabla al-isha. have your dinner before praying your prayer at night. Because if you're hungry, you cannot thank God. And so it's very important that economic crisis these days should be tackled. And we feel that's part of our responsibility. Charity, kindness, etc. Kindness is not only what you feel in your heart, but really you implement in a form of actions.
All right, good. Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the role of technology in religion and in the various congregations and faith houses here that are led by these folks. And we'll also talk about the prediction of the end of the world. It happened twice this year, at least the prediction. We'll see what these guys say. Stay with us. Welcome back. We resume our discussion with some of our faith leaders here in the tri-state area. I want to ask you about embracing technology because it's ever-changing. It's a big part of our lives. How do you incorporate it in your services? We've read about some big churches now encouraging worshipers to bring iPads to Mass. They don't even communicate with them with the old bulletins or newsletters before. How has it changed or affected your faith? Monsignor, we'll start with you.
Well, I mean, I think today in the world in which we live, it's so busy. So we have to, in a sense, bring religion to the people. They're not necessarily coming to you. So what you do is, you have to let people know what's going on in the parish, our activities, our services when they're available. So, through email and the website, we put a web page out. They know everything that's going on in the parish, what's going on, what services we provide.
But isn't it isolating? Doesn't it go counter to that congregation togetherness feel? Doesn't it distract, Rabbi?
Yeah. Someone said we've gone from people of the book to people of the Facebook. And you do find there is so much attention given to technology that you lose the human connection. And people, I think, yearn for that one-on-one. They yearn for the warmth. And so you got to walk a very fine line because, yes, you can reach a lot of people on the information highway, but they become more isolated.
Do people check their BlackBerries while they're in their services, or do you make them check them? What happens, Swami?
People who use cell phones who don't know how to put it on silent mode or even vibratory mode. Right. But on this note, I would like to say that Facebook or YouTube or whatever is not a substitute for one-on-one and people coming to your congregation, but they supplement in a great way to dissemination of information to a wider circle of people. So what we do is we upload MP3 versions of our talks onto Facebook, onto our own website, so that way people who cannot come to your service, they get to know, they get to get this message.
Imam, do you worry about people getting lost in their technology and disconnected? And the message ultimately not getting through?
I have some worry about that, but I agree with everybody that it really supplemented into our effort to disseminate information. I was sitting down with the rabbi and I was tweeting out about this interview to the people, and I got a lot
we're thankful for that.
I got a lot of response, by the way. But let me just say this: religions. And I'm talking about Abrahamic in this particular, that technology is very, very important, mentioned in our holy books. I still remember the King Solomon, for example, when he wanted to move that palace of the queens, and he said, before the blink of your eyes. And I was thinking about what does it mean? And it came to my mind that probably this is the text message. Before you blink your eyes, you communicate with someone at the end of the world. Yeah. Before you blink the eyes. In the Holy Quran, it is mentioned that camel is the best means of transportation. And I used to challenge the Muslims that what does mean here is that you have to master technology to create the best means of transportation. So you have to create jumbo jet in order for you to go to Hajj pilgrimage.
I still think young people want a hand to hold, a shoulder to lean on, and an example to learn from, as someone said. And you can't do all of that on the internet. There are limitations to technology. We're not all powerful through technology. We still need the human interaction. All
right. Before we go to break, when you talk about language and communication, Monsignor, the Catholic Church just went through for the church, radical change in some of the language of the Mass. Why, and what is the thinking behind that, and how's it working out? Well,
the new missal of the Roman Church has changed. They tried to get back to the literal translation and not in a sense of paraphrasing, to be more faithful to actually the Latin translation. And with that, it's not the way we speak normally, but it's a little difficult for people to accept at first. But they've been working on this for about 10 years. And, when after Vatican II, when when the language was translated from the
Vatican
Latin.
II is a council that
Right,
come
the
together
council,
of
the
church
Vatican II
leaders
council,
and greatly revamped
in the early 60s.
the norms
and,
of the church.
John the 23rd called the council, and the whole church really went through a whole transformation.
Okay.
And at the time, the translation was said, and it was more of a paraphrasing. It wasn't the literal translation. And it took all these years. There was debates going back and forth, and they've been working on this for the last 10 years. And it's really to be faithful to the true translation of the words that were spoken in the scriptures.
All right, when we come back, the rapture, the end of the world, we'll get the accurate prediction right here. Welcome back, everyone. Our discussion on this weekend of reflection and faithful dialogue. Let me ask you this before we go on. You're all religious leaders. You're all administrators. There are many demands put upon you. There are many people who are often having struggles in their own lives and come to you for guidance. Do each of you ever have a crisis in faith where you have difficulty connecting to your spiritual focus, to your God or your deity? Swami, how do you handle those situations?
Well, if we are regular with our spiritual practices, which includes meditation and prayer in the morning and evening, and if we are regular with our scriptural studies and reflection, I think this crisis of faith cannot happen in our own lives, because what we do by way of giving sermon, preaching, is not just born of scholarship, but out of some deep conviction and out of some spiritual anchoring within.
So you have a deep well, a reservoir, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah.
But how do you fight being human? You know, you're leaders of big organizations, really. The politics of the city, the things that all of us fall trapped to. How do you fight being human, Monsignor?
Well, I mean, it's a balancing act, really, when you think about it. We have to be a pastor first and foremost, and then you're an administrator. And it's about, putting your priorities in order. As Swami said, you have to be faithful to the scriptures. You have to spend quality time. That's a big phrase today. Quality time with yourself and your God every single day.
One of the good things about Islam is that we consider every single act is a worship for God. So the moment I wake up in the morning, I consider that is the beginning of my journey to worship God. So even when I eat with remembrance of God. And that itself enhances my spirituality. So I don't have to see that being in a mosque, connected to God, or the moment I leave the mosque, I'm not connected with God anymore. For me, it is a continued process of being connected with God Almighty. And this is a spiritual enhancement.
Rabbi, how do the matters of the world not get you down, or how do you connect?
I'm a child of Holocaust survivors. My parents aren't living anymore. They came to this country. They lost their family. First group to reach out to them were the nuns of St. Mary's Church in Lynn, Massachusetts. I've always felt it is a privilege to do what we do. And also, you have to be crazy, because the prophet said, a person of spirit is crazy. If you have a commitment and you have this kind of desire to help other people on a day-to-day basis, it's demanding. But so firefighters, so police, we do what we do because we love what we do. And someone said years ago, when you love what you do, don't call it work. I wake up each day and I say, thankfully, you're able to do something to make a difference in other people's lives. That energizes you. And I'm blessed to be part of that.
Jesus always had a time to pray. He was busier than we were.
Yeah.
And he always stopped to pray, and there has to be a priority in our lives, And we live our prayer. St. James tells us faith without works is like having no faith. We got to put it into action, but we have to stay focused.
The prediction of the end of the world that got a lot of attention earlier this year, a particular religious sect, if you will. How do you respond to that? What do you say to that? And why should, we say some people look at it with cynicism and disdain, but many of the religions say that there will be a kind of a reckoning. How do you handle that?
For a Jew, we have to worry about this world, right? We're a this worldly oriented faith. I went over to one of those people who was clamoring about the end of the world, and I said, she predicted the date. There was an exact date. I said, I'll tell you what, let me make it easier for you. Convey all of your property to me now. Put that date on, because there won't be a world the day after. She wasn't so willing to do that. But I think if we spend more time worrying about doing more in this world, caring more about one another in this world, the next world will be a reward in and of itself. So many people worry more about the tomorrow. It's like your kid gets into the car. They worry more about getting there and losing the sense of enjoyment along the road, along the trip.
Prophet Muhammad was asked when it would be the day of destruction, the day of the doomsday. And he didn't answer because he didn't know. He simply said to him, what did you do for it? So it's about whether you're going to prepare for it. So in Islam, the end of the world is certainly something to happen. That's what we believe in. But nobody knows. That is the secret of God. So what God wants us to do is to do every possible way to make things in life to prepare for that.
According to Hinduism, there is no end of the world. The world is a splendid place. It's called Karma Bhumi in Sanskrit, which means the field of action. It's here. We can do good acts, think good thoughts, and fashion our destiny. And in the afterworld, which is there only the effects of our good actions are played out. So this world, we can do good things here, think good thoughts here, and it's only here that we can think of God, practice spiritual disciplines, and grow toward God realization.
Okay, a couple of issues came up on the local landscape this year, and we're going to ask these religious leaders how they react to that. Stay with us. About gay marriage, it became legal in New York State this year. Same-sex couples can wed in civil unions, but usually not religious ones. As leaders in this diverse city, do you feel increasing pressure to deal with this issue? I mean, I know there are certain strictures, but how are you responding to that development this year? I guess the obvious start is Monsignor Gigantiello.
Well, obviously, I mean, people know what the church is teaching is on gay unions, and it's a very hot issue. The church teaches that the institution of marriage, which has been around for thousands of years, is the union of a man and woman for procreation. And it's something that has really rocked the church, and it's something that the church has spoken out against. We do not allow marriages in the church.
Rabbi?
Are we out of time? Let me say, this is one of the most painful issues I think all of us have had to confront. I'll never forget, someone said to me not long ago, Rabbi, if I had a choice, do you think I would choose this lifestyle? So we recognize the reality of it. I think we struggle. A house of worship has to open its doors as widely as possible to allow people to walk in, people who are different. God created a world with difference, and we have to promote the possibility of people living with difference. In my community, the Jewish community, there are different denominations. There are those who will perform same-sex union. There are those who will not. And I simply say, let's find room for all.
I still remember I texted you asking your opinions about should I respond to this or not, and he said, leave it alone. And I took that very seriously. Thank you so much. The whole idea of Islam...
Now that's interfaith dialogue.
The whole idea of Islam, I think, is freedom of choice. I'm a Muslim because I choose to be Muslim. And it is based on my choice. And so when people choose things in life, I say, good luck. I don't have any right to intervene. And as the Rabbi mentioned, we open our doors to everybody to come for their spiritual inquiries.
We don't make any kind of discrimination between the people who attend our services. And even if such people come, they get to hear of Vedanta, the message of Vedanta, which is another name for Hinduism, which says what's required is to grow in purity of mind and be moral. And when we're established in morality, spiritual life becomes possible. So the message is open to everyone. So any kind of discrimination or any problem doesn't directly impact our congregation or our church.
All right. Well, gentlemen, we thank you for spending a few moments with us on this weekend, which is, of course, sacred to so many people. And we can, even those who are not religious, kind of take time to reflect on family and spiritual values. Thank you, Rabbi, Monsignor, Imam, and Swami.
Thank you,
and we'll see you next time on The Debrief.
Thank you, Dave.